Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Good morning and welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and this podcast is ranked in the top 2% of the most popular podcasts globally. And it's not because of me, it's because of my guests. They are all incredible. I am honored and blessed to share time with people who are at the top of their game, and they are here and willing to help you get to where you want to be in life and in business. These are not people who hold back. Their goal is to share with us the essence of peak performance. And today I get to welcome back my friend, Tony Rubleski. Now, he is the president of Mind Capture Group, and with over 25 years in the personal development industry, Tony is a sought-after speaker, strategic business coach, and creator of the Mind Capture Boot Camp. I think that's where we met. I think I knew a lot of people that knew him, and I got kind of tuned in there. His latest book, which is on my desk, is, I love this title, How to Get Off Your Ass and Make It Happen. That's kind of pointed, isn't it? So, and it's a must read for aspiring authors. And this adds to his acclaimed Mind Capture series, all of which are on my bookshelves here. And they include multiple bestsellers and endorsements from top industry leaders. So Tony's insights have been featured in major media outlets like Toastmasters International Magazine, the Detroit Free Press, Fox, ABC, CNN Radio, NPR, and Entrepreneur Magazine Radio. So whether you're looking to capture more minds and profits or write that dream book, Tony Rubleski is here to help us. Tony, welcome back to Your Partner in Success Radio. It's been too long. I mean, it's been a while since you've been here.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. I want to give a shout out to your listeners around the world who support you. And, this is fun. I always look forward to when we get a chance. I think it's been a couple years, so it's an honor to be back.
It has been. I was kind of shocked when I went back and went, what? It's not as if we're not in touch. So how did that happen? So anyway, and before we get started, and I was mentioning to you, this to you in the virtual green room, I have to tell you that I was having a conversation with a mutual friend of ours yesterday. And in fact, I am working with him on his new podcast, and thank you for that introduction. And we wandered off the reservation a bit and mentioned you in your new book. And he was wondering out loud why so many people want or need to write a book. He's very aware of it now because he's friends with both of us. And I think we decided that it's much the same as having a podcast. It's a powerful way to get your voice heard and build credibility at the same time. And in fact, I would go so far as to think you probably need both.
Good points. And I want to add something to that. As you'd mentioned a few minutes ago before we started recording, is this. We're already writing books, we don't know it. I thought about this while you were doing the intro, is that we've done it since the dawn of time. We call it storytelling. And that to me is spoken word versions of books. Now, the last 200-300 years, we have more access, particularly the last 30 years, to document our stories into printed word. There's digital Kindle, which you can do, Denise, but podcast, storytelling are all versions of content that can be made into books. Most people never think that way or realize that epiphany. We've been writing books, they've just been handed down in different formats for thousands of years.
This is true. And I was telling Aaron yesterday, he said, I wonder, he said, I don't have anything to write about. I said, you will. Because when I'm telling you, his podcast is going to be phenomenal. It's kind of a niche thing, but important. And I said, listen, you get a handful of those and you start parsing them, you've got book chapters. He said, oh. And he perked up. So you're already having an impact with me and with our friend Aaron. So, and like I told you earlier, I jumped out of bed this morning at 4:30. And the devil said, "Oh crap, she's awake," and I ran to my computer. Always, and I ran to my computer and I knocked out the better part of an chapter for my new book. And
awesome.
I know, and I reread it just before we got in here. I went, "Oh, that's good." So once you get that in your head, You're right. The storytelling, the podcast, we're already doing it. Write that book. So I'm going to get out of your way, and I want you to tell us, give us a book overview. What is the book about? What's its main objectives?
Well, it's a great opening question. The title is So You Want to Write a Book. And the subtitle gets a lot of fun wordplay, how to get off your ass and make it happen, okay? So the book is generally written from the conversations and questions I get every day and a lot throughout a week is I want to write a book, how do I do it? Or, I have a story in me, how did you write a book? So after 20 years now, next year full time as a writer and a speaker and a consultant, I've said, you know what? I want to be able to help people, Denise. I can't always work with them one to one because of time constraints. So the book is really a great way to pick my brain, almost like a one-on-one consult. So it's really a value. I don't make a ton of money off it, but more importantly, I want people to find resources to help them get their book over the finish line or take the idea in their head for 10, 20 years and finally get taking action. So it's really a give back. And again, I don't like to turn people down, but also I know that time is very valuable. So that's really the genesis behind the book. And I want to start out with a quick story here and take everyone back 13 years ago, 2011. I was doing an interview series called a Captured Mind newsletter. It was a printed newsletter with an audio CD. I know that sounds old school, but I had many subscribers that paid for it gladfully each month to hear these interviews. And I made an inquiry out to an author by the name of William Paul Young. And he wrote a book called The Shack. And about 2 months later goes by my email inbox. I get an email, and I'm going to paraphrase what he said. He said, I got your inquiry to interview me, and amongst the thousands of emails I get in 3 email inboxes, yours stood out. So I'm like, oh my goodness. He said, yes, let's do the interview. So a couple months go by later, we record the hour interview about his book. And he wrote this book called The Shack as his 50th birthday gift to just his I think it was 5 or 6 children and his wife at the time as a gift. And he gave it to him. And what happened was people got a few extra copies made in his family. He was dead broke, Denise, when he wrote this book, almost on the verge of bankruptcy. He had, life hit him hard. They're living in the side of a gas station, him and all of his kids in Gresham, Oregon, crammed in this little gas station trying to make a living. What happens is the word of mouth from this gift to his 5 or 6 children, I think it's 6, but he gives it to him. And the people went, oh my God, Paul, you need to make this into a book for like the masses. So by word of mouth, the book just starts to spread. This is back, I think, in 2003 or 4 when he wrote the original version of The Shack. Fast forward, the word of mouth takes off so big, Denise, that they are now printing, self-publishing thousands of books on their own, self-publishing, print on demand. It's called POD. And they approach publishers. Many of them turn them down, but this wildfire of word of mouth just keeps spreading. People say, you've got to read this book. So a few years after he writes this little book as a gift for his 50th birthday to his direct family, the book gets picked up. It has now gone on to sell over 20 million copies. It became a major motion picture 4 years ago. It actually made quite a bit of money, which is very unique in the Christian independent movie market. Hollywood turned it down. Well, oops. And
Yeah.
oops to all the publishers that turned him down. So I'm not saying or implying that you're going to write a book like The Shack, but I can tell you one thing. You never know the impact your story will have on your direct family, your friends, your clients, long after you pass away. So I use that story, which I haven't brought up very often in a lot of the recent media interviews, but I think it's very timely for this reason. You have a unique life story. You never know who it can positively impact and the significance it can have on other people. So I mentioned this to your global audience. Never downplay or let someone distract from what you can share. It could be a work of fiction, nonfiction, a how-to, a simple hobby book, stories about your life that you share with your family or friends. But you never know that legacy and how it can be passed on until you put it into printed form. And again, a second reason to write the book is to dispel the myth that you have to be Stephen King or Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, or you have to be John Grisham. You don't have to be. And your goals are your own goals, Denise. Maybe it sells 50 books, maybe it never sells 50, but you've at least got the printed word there to hand off to people that you care about long after you pass away. So that to me is another joy. There's no rules, there's no specific how-to to do this. You don't have to try to get New York published. You might just self-publish it. And then W.M. Paul Young's case with the book The Check, it may take off so big that New York publishers want to chase you down. So I just want to throw that out there as a starting point of interview is don't let anyone confine you. Don't let your own self-talk distract you from ever writing. And I'm looking at my folder on my desk. I've written several mind capture books off of scraps of piece of paper and post-it notes that have accumulated over years. I look at it and go, how can we organize these ideas, these notes, these stories, these little how-tos into a book? So it doesn't just magically happen. Stephen King to J.K. Rowling to all the writers I know in different genres don't have the exact blueprint, but there are successful clues and principles that are in this book that help any type of writer at any level. And again, I want to start out with a story because, like Zig Ziglar taught me years ago in the business of personal development, facts tell us things, but stories sell us.
Yeah.
And damn it, too many people die, as Oliver Wonder Holmes would say, with their music still in them. I interpret that as they die with their stories, their wisdom. It goes to the grave. And humanity has lost it because we did not capture it. So if I've lit a candle in your mental mind today or some of the listeners, that is the entire mission of the book in this interview in our time together.
And I've always scribbled down notes when I'm talking with people, and I wrote down legacy and underlined it several times because it is important. And storytelling,
Mhm.
again, critical. I mean, and I'm not saying put out a bunch of baloney, garbage crap, but we all have stories. And if you get around a good storyteller, look, I'm in Cajun country. These people can tell stories like you have never heard. Some of it you can't understand because it's a thick Cajun accent,
Mhm.
but you're leaning forward going, tell me more. Tell me more. It's, good stories, they kind of wiggle into your soul.
Well, that's powerful. I would ask you a favor.
Sure.
Write down what you just said. Good stories wiggle into your soul. Send
Okay.
me that because I want to share that out and give you full credit. We tend to forget in this noisy 50,000 thoughts per day world with everyone's attention span now. It's average. Microsoft just did the study, Denise, 8 seconds. We
Is it
forget,
that high? I didn't think it was that high, to be
well,
honest.
it's incredibly distracting. But you go back to that statement and that testimonial and that comment you created on the fly. That is so relevant. Here's why. I don't care if you're 20, 30, 50, or 90. Stories don't have a 8 second attention span time limit. They pull us in sometimes for hours. That is to me a great argument against the shortened content world that's saying you got to go 5 seconds, only 10 seconds, only 30 seconds, and God forbid, only 1 minute on TikTok. You can't go any longer. I call absolute horseshit on that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Okay. A great story doesn't need to have 9 second window or 30-second max. And I go round and round with young digital content creators that want to debate me that, long form copy, stories don't sell, and people won't pay attention beyond 2 or 3 minutes. They've been trained. Well, if it's relevant enough and if it hits at the soul level and it connects, someone will give you much longer than what TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook are telling you. And
Yeah.
I literally I will debate people all day long not to waste my energy to prove that I'm right. I see it when I'm teaching live in front of 500 people. I have meeting planners come up to me and go, "You had them spellbound for an hour." In certain points, when you showed a slide and told a funny story, no one was looking at their phone, Tony. And I don't need that to stroke my ego. I just know that the right story with the right audience will often mesmerize people because we are taught since small children, even though the technology's changed, that a story pulls us in. It leans us forward around the campfire. In the age of digital, high touch still wins, Denise. It will always win. The challenge is there's too much noise, there's so many fragmented channels, and we have so much self-talk that a great story can override all those competing factors. So I'm going to take your audience deep down 30 years of doing this now and 20 years full time. What I've learned in Toastmasters from my coaches, from being on stage with over 1,000 live groups paid, that I see patterns. In the best in the world that I run with, we utilize the same things: stories, visuals, and great communication. Okay. Stories, visuals, and great communication. You can get those things working. Let's bring it back to the point of the book. When you translate it into the written word, it still is just as effective, Denise. And some
For
people
me,
prefer
it's
to read
more.
Kindle, they prefer a printed book, they want to hear the
Right.
audio. It's the same thing. It
I
involves
want to do all
words and
three.
stories.
All
Yeah.
three. Now, don't give me a video. I'm not going to watch it. That's just not how I learn.
Mhm.
But if you give me a book in any shape or form, I'm all over it. I've got yours right here. It's sitting right in front of me. If it were on Kindle, I would go grab that too. You know,
Mhm.
if it ever winds up on Audible, I'll be listening to it.
Yeah. And remember, each of us is unique, has talents from God, I call it, and unique ways we learn best. I've shifted more to audio. And sometimes I sit down and I try to read, and I might get a few pages in, whereas sometimes I prefer to hear an audio version in the morning. As I age, my ways to receive input have changed. And I also think that's the influence of technology, which I can't escape. As I'm online more, I prefer to hear audio and watch it sometimes versus sitting down for an hour to read it. So remember, there is no one size fits all of how we learn. The key thing is you keep learning, and more importantly, you keep writing and creating. And I'll pivot into what John Grisham said, the great fiction writer. God, he's had 300 million copies in print, 34 number one bestsellers in a row. I mean, you want to learn from the best. His advice is simple to write in my book. Okay. The best advice he ever got was to write 1 page per day. Until you write 1 page, nothing's going to happen, Denise. Anyone listening? It's simple. Chunk it down. Stephen King's book is called On Writing. Stephen King says he writes a few hours per day, whether he feels like it or not. He does not write a book like Carrie or It. Some of his classic books are not written in one day. They're not written magically. They're written by time, progression, and habit. Let me repeat: time, progression, and habit. We don't need to be Stephen King. We shouldn't be that. We shouldn't be J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter series. We shouldn't be Sylvia Brown. Some of these great works of fiction, be yourself, but learn the lessons from the masters. They've given us the clues. Chunk the process down. If you chunk it down, you get momentum. I want everyone to picture here a set of dominoes that are lined up. You tip the first domino, see it? It falls forward and it gets speed, and the rest of the dominoes go in succession. As you write each day, or you write a page at a time, you go, oh my goodness, I can do this. Like you said this morning, you got what we called in flow, Denise. You were in flow. Like, and when it happens, it's the most beautiful thing you ever have. It's called a download. I call it a divine download. Okay.
Call those
And
God
when it,
winks.
oh, when
Ben
those
and I
God
talk
winks are
about
hitting,
that. God winks. When they come around, I will
yep,
stop what I'm doing. I lift my hands off the keyboard, I lift
yep,
my butt off the chair, and I go listen.
amen. I say it to my kids and my partner all day long and my clients, God wink, God wink. They're like, all right, God wink. It's when you listen to your intuition or the prompting or the creative bug hits you. In a lot of the classic Greek mythology, it's the muse that
Mhm.
inspires you. And when she or he hits you, I can't tell how many times in an airplane, people like, I'm like, you have a pen? I usually have them on me for that reason. I pulled my car over. I've asked Uber drivers, hey, do you have a pen and paper real quick? And the idea hits. Now it's easier. I just look at my phone. I go right into memo and I'll tell someone, hey, excuse me for a second. I'll record the audio into a memo on my phone. And I just, oh my goodness, it's happening. And it just, you never know what's going to strike. So when the muse or the God wink or the divine download happens, always capture it in real time. Do not wait. Do not trust your memory. I'm 51. And since 40 years old, I always have a pen and paper for the most part on me. My kids are like, yeah, dad's got post-it notes everywhere
Me
because I
too.
never know when the inspiration's going to hit. So,
Mhm.
if you think, well, I'm not creative, you are. You have 50 to 60,000 self-talk conversations in your head on average. The North American of today, you got ideas. The thing is, we don't stop when the really good ones hit us and we don't capture it right then and there. If you don't capture it, you're almost never going to remember it again.
When I
So,
capture mine, when my God winks happen, almost invariably is in the shower.
yep.
Honestly. And I take my showers hot enough to steam cabbage. So, I'm in there for a while trying to run the hot water heater down. I've never managed it. But all of a sudden, these God winks are coming, and they're coming in fast, and they're perfect. You cannot, or I can't, get out of the shower, dry off, race around, or streak across the house, depending on how urgent I think it is, get to my computer and have any of those thoughts still make sense to me. It just doesn't work. So I take bathtub crayons in the shower with me,
Smart,
and I
very
write
smart.
all over those walls. And once the steam clears, it takes a while. I'll go back in, take pictures of it, wipe the walls down, and off I go. I don't lose a
Yep.
thing.
Well, I want to go on something. I don't know if I've ever shared an interview, so here goes. One of the coaches and people I interviewed, his name is Perry Marshall.
Oh
Perry
yeah,
is
yeah.
tops business strategist, copywriter extraordinaire. And one of his books on time management, which is phenomenal, talks about a chapter called Renaissance time. And Renaissance time is where you literally calm your mind down, you take a walk, you take a bath, you put on some music, you're riding your bike, you're driving your car, and you just let your mind just kind of relax. Renaissance time happened to me yesterday. I was driving to a video shoot for our event with it involved horses and doing some videos, short videos to promote our event. And I'm out in the country driving down a dirt road. You can't make this up. Following my friend who's taking me to the horse farm. And about 1 minute in the drive following her, I had a flashback to an event we did 4 years ago. I went, oh my goodness, there's the parallel. 2020 was a year of election. We're going into election this year as we record this interview now in 2024. I went, oh my goodness, tell the story of the event we did in 2020 to parallel marketing the event now this year in 2024. So I had a scripted outline of a couple things we were going to cover on video. I got out of the car and my friend Wendy said, Wendy, the first video we're going to do is not scripted. So when we got on the horse, literally I sat on a horse and she recorded the video. I had the idea from the car. I didn't have to write the outline down. I said, hey, everybody, it's Tony Rubleski. I was driving today and I went back to 2020. Why is that year important? Now, Denise, that was unscripted. It was on the fly. It was spontaneous. And it was something that I'd forgotten about 4 years ago that made just as much sense today in the year 2024. And we're going to go with that video. But my mind was in a relaxed state. I had a God wink. It was perfectly on schedule. We were going to shoot video anyway, and I couldn't have scripted that out. But
And you
if I
took
had been
action.
running from appointment to appointment and checking emails and checking my phone and checking social media, the download would have never occurred because I wasn't ready to hear it.
Or you
Certain
were
circles
scared.
call it
Yeah.
the Holy Spirit. They call it,
Yeah. Yeah.
different energy. You were ready to hear from the higher power. But I was in a relaxed state of mind that the idea dropped, and I went right then and there, implement and capture and record the idea, and then we did it.
Well, you and I talk about Napoleon Hill a lot, especially
Mhm.
with friend Bengay the Third. The secret to that book, Think and Grow Rich, is take action. Don't wait.
Ta-da!
Take action. What are you waiting on? Go do it.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So, and this is fascinating. I can't wait to see that video, but I love that you jumped on a horse and just let it flow. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. And I was writing this morning talking about active listening. I think, and I'd love to hear your view on this, a lot of active listening, we're concentrating on what other people are saying. Most of the time, though, we're not concentrating on our own active listening, which we just talked about. God winks, downloads. We need to pay a lot of attention to what our hearts and our souls and our subconscious are, what we're being told.
Absolutely. Take you back in time in your audience. 2 weeks ago, I'm in Key West, Florida. I'm in front of 40 insurance professionals, giving an entire new presentation. One of the points about 5 ways to give a world-class presentation. Here's one of the points I said. Active listening. I said, how ironic. I'm speaking with you, not at you. I'm going to talk about listening as a professional speaker that gets paid to speak. And they all kind of chuckled. I said, here's the synopsis of this point. The best appointments I've ever had with any leader, nonprofit, for-profit CEO, artist, fellow authors, is when I ask a couple of questions and I shut up and they talk to me for like an hour. I don't say much more than a couple, Hey, if I heard you right, can I recap this point? I'm going to write some notes down. My best presentations are not me speaking. to win new clients. It's me listening, Denise. Talk about a paradox. And who am I focusing on? Not me, the client or the prospective client. And they want almost me to be like Dr. Phil and be a therapist. I sit there with a notepad and a pen. I just shut up and they just unload on me. I learned a lot of that from Ben Gay III, our mutual friend. You don't have to have 7 ways to close a sale, 17 questions you must ask. It doesn't
No.
hurt to have that in your repertoire. But I find with senior leaders, again, from all industries, for profit, nonprofit, they just want to be heard. So if you're listening this far in, here's your golden gem from me to you. People are walking around, especially now in the world that's being loaded and overwhelmed with fear and doubt and indecision, and no one paying attention. They just want to be heard. Let me give you another source point. The late, great Mary Kay Ash, who started Mary Kay Cosmetics, used to say this to all her folks and her team. Imagine someone's walking around with an invisible sign that you can't see around their neck that says, please appreciate me.
Hmm.
That is 10 times more relevant now, post internet, than I've ever seen because we have more information available than ever. We have no more attention spans. Um, Dan Kennedy, my other mentor, would say that most people have the attention span of a goldfish on meth cocaine. Let,
I was going to
let that
say
sink
that,
in.
but yours is
And
better.
I can't tell you the gift of listening from your relationships to your partner, to your children, to your cats, to your dog, to your insurance salesperson. The more you let people talk and genuinely just let them talk and listen to them, they will love you. It's Dale Carnegie stuff. It's the old classic book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. In the age of digital noise, we have forgotten the gift of listening and how valuable and how appreciated it is. It's like a lost art. So again, it sounds almost like I'm dispelling all the sales training that I teach and that I've had for 30 plus years. But the older I get now, at the age of 51, as a Gen Xer, again, I walk into a meeting, I have a plan. It's just a listen. I have a couple of questions. I may or may not get to them. Denise, why I love coming on your program. I've been on hundreds of podcasts and I'm grateful to God for that. I've been on lots of television and radio over the years. You are the best damn listener I've ever been on. And if
Oh,
any guest ever been a show of, you
thank
actively
you.
listen. You just turn the controls over to the guest and you let them talk. So this entire interview is proof positive of the power of a great podcaster listening to the guest. So
And
thank
I
you for
have to,
letting me tie
oh,
that in.
thank you. I appreciate you so much. But I'll tell you, and I'll tell the audience, I have, I script everything and then I throw the script out the window. But it's there to keep me honest, to be very clear. I'm never going to ask gotcha questions or say, hey, Tony, what is your personal writing process and routine? I'm not going to do that. Now, I have about 18 questions I could ask you, but you know what? I don't have to because you're answering them before I can even think them. This
Well,
is
and it
all
also
about
shows that
you.
you're a professional. You have a plan, you have a backup. You don't go in the interview cold. That also
No.
attracts guests that know that you're serious and you actually enjoy what you're doing.
Well, I get to meet people, and now I've said this multiple times on my podcast, it's written on my podcast page. My guests, and there's hundreds of you, become my mentors in many, many ways. I never
Hmm.
forget any of my guests. I just don't because at some level, maybe once, maybe multiple shows, maybe through your books, you have kind of squirreled your way into my soul. That's why I do what
Wow.
I do.
Well, it's fascinating. Let me add to that. When I interview people, which I still do some interviews, not as active as 10, 15 years ago, I was constantly learning from them. And by reading their books before I interviewed them, and they would drop occasional like God winks on an interview because the energy was so good that I'm like, wow, I should almost pay them for that interview. I never did. However, the gift of their time is invaluable.
Yes.
So they knew that I was going to share it and that I was also, even if it only impacted a few people, it had a major impact on me so that I could share their wisdom down the road and with subscribers. and from the stage. Many of the quotes that I share every day on social media are from those interviews or the books I read during our interviews with them or prep work. So that reciprocal exchange of knowledge and time is just huge. So, to me, I look at whoever's listening, take away one or two things from you and I. And if it prompts an idea when you're listening to an interview like this or other podcasts, take the idea from the interview and move on that. That's the other gift most people don't talk about. It's not that you're just listening, it's prompting ideas in your brain that are sparked from the interview that you're hearing, or it reminds you of things you forgot to do or things you've been wanting. It gives you that nudge. So there's a whole lot of I would call it holistic benefits besides just the actual interview.
I love that. And I actually, and this is sad, and I hate to even have to say it, but I've had so many of my guests because I've got hundreds of books in this room. This is where my entrepreneurial library lives, and I've got a stack over there. I can see they're your books. And then I've got your new book in front of me. I've got Ben Gay's books. There are books that I'm going to dive into all of the time. You guys do become my mentors. But I look at these books and people will say, afterwards, because I always call my guests and a lot of the magic happens there after
Mhm.
the show. And let's say you read my book. Well, of course I did. You gifted it to me. It was a gift. I am honor and duty bound to read it and review it and share it. You didn't just send it to me so I could make it, a dust catcher in my office. Yes, I read it. And thank you for sending it. But
Let me
apparently, a lot of people don't read them, and that just hurts my heart.
Yes. My whole central premise of book one, 22 years ago, when it was first being inked from the mind and the spirit to paper, was the battle for what I called mind capture.
Right.
I've written tons of books, do live events off of it, and hammer it, hammer it, hammer it. Longtime fans of my work go, yeah, mind capture, you're really adamant about it, and here's why. We're in an attention war. I didn't know 22 years ago in my early 30s that the battle for attention would get worse because the advent of cell phones and social media. Not that that's bad, it's a huge gift, but it has to be managed wisely because it's so addictive and very distracting if we don't rein it in. So I look at it and go, we would hope that people would at least look at something. We would pray and have faith they might read it. But frankly, I would say less than 1% read the books that we send them or they get.
And see,
My
that's just
publishing,
wrong. That's
my
absolutely
publisher told me most people never make it beyond page 20 of a book, Denise. They
no.
never go beyond page 20. In our industry, the joke is they buy books at seminars or conferences. It's called shelf development. They buy it, they put it on their desk with great intentions to read it. 3 months go by, they clean their desk, they put it on their bookshelf, and that to them it fulfills the scratch of the itch. They feel okay doing that, and it's not for me to ever judge. I can't follow people around and force them to read my books or watch my videos. That's just outrageous. But very, very few people will dig down. It's not an arrogant statement. It's just that people don't focus as well as they used to. Look around you at all the people that are dying from texting while they're driving, that hit people that are on a motorcycle that are texting. We have a real addiction, big picture problem. I'm not trying to sound like a politician pandering to your audience. I see it. And I will often joke with a group of 200 or 300 people and say, look, my mission is to have you pay attention to me for an hour. I know you got your phone next to you. I hope that it's engaging. It's not for my ego. It's that my time is valuable, your time is valuable, your employer's time is valuable. Put us in a room together. So I only have 1 hour of our life together, you and me in this room. I never meet you again. That I didn't waste your time. I got you thinking, and it was worth your time. I'm now setting an upfront agreement spoken to the audience that here's how I'd like to look at the next hour. And I think that's why I get constant feedback from meeting planners go, look, we haven't seen a speaker mesmerize an audience like you did. That's not an accident, Denise. I don't want to waste my time flying into Key West to
Right.
entertain them. I want them to go, damn, that was worth my time. And I want to leave and go, damn, that was worth me taking 2 days to get on an airplane to get here, to give up my valuable time to be with you. It's not arrogance, it's supreme confidence that your life clock and attention is just as valuable as mine. And I hope, even if you don't buy my book, even if you don't like me, that at least I provoke you to think a little differently, to ask some questions. Something else that I do in every live program is it's just come out of my soul the last few months is I say, look, you should question every slide, every story, and every PowerPoint I'm going to give you. You're an adult. I want you to critically think how to improve your life, your customers, and those you serve. I am not your guru. I don't have all the answers. I have a few ideas. That's why I'm in front of you. I have to have skill set and depth of knowledge, but you should not follow me blindly. You should not agree with everything I say to you. I am not here to speak at you. I'm here to speak with you. And if you have a great question, you should feel safe to throw it at me and come up and ask me. That's just maybe years and years of seeing people that it's also having humility to say, look, I don't have all the knowledge. I know people that are just as wise, if not better than me. And I'm still having coaches and mentors and books that influence me. I don't know why more people in our industry don't get it. I see too many arrogant speakers, men and women around the world that think they have all their answers are the best. No, it's an idea and a strategy and opinion that may help someone, but the person next to you might completely disagree. They might have a completely different worldview. They might have said, look, this doesn't, it's not relevant. I haven't hit this part of my life yet. So let me go back to your
Oh,
point about
say that
books.
again. You haven't hit, I haven't hit, say that again.
You
I
haven't hit
haven't
that
hit that part. Right.
point of worldview in your life yet, if I
There
recall
you
what
go.
I said.
Yeah.
But different books. Here's the thing: I also challenge people. I've read books in my 20s that I never got through half the book. I didn't like it. I picked up in my 30s again, gave it a second shot, and it resonated with me. Sometimes I read books in my 40s and now 50s that I reread every year because they make more sense, because I have a different set of life experiences to view the material with. I'm at a different range or frequency of life clock. And I'm going a little deeper with your audience because I know they're very sophisticated, but certain books just you're not ready to read them yet. They don't make any sense. Quick example, I'm looking at my bookshelf, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Great book. I read it in my 30s. And I was like, yeah, kind of boring, kind of deep, kind of over my head. I read it again in my 40s. It made a whole lot more sense. I reread it a couple years ago. It made a lot more sense than I even thought it could because there's a different stage and progression of life to receive the teaching better.
And
So
I've read books
process
like
that.
that.
Your audience that's
You're right.
listening, that's
Yeah.
pretty intense.
It is, and I have that happen to me all the time. I'll pick up a book that I haven't read in a while. Yeah, just kind of like you, saying, it was okay. I enjoyed it. It's not critical. But for some reason, God wink, I'll pick up that book and all of a sudden I'm fascinated. I'm reading it and going, I never read this part. What the heck? It's all new to me in some ways, but part of it isn't. It's like going to visit your grandpa. You recognize him. He smells like your grandpa. You know who he is, but all of a sudden he's a different guy. Same
Yeah.
thing.
Well, let's look at the power of books. Okay. Let's go on a little bit of a digression. And I think it will be of value. Okay. Something that in my travels the last 20 years, full time doing this, a lot of people have come and gone in my life, some by choice, some it didn't work out. I have a couple of ex-wives. I respect them. We've made amends. I have no ill will towards my ex-wives. But what has been the consistent thing that has stayed in my life, because I travel a lot too. I knew the risks of doing what I do. It's an interesting lifestyle, but it's tough on relationships, okay? A couple staples that have always been with me besides my faith walk, my bookshelf and my music. And I have
Mm.
guitars in my office. I love my music on my phone. I have hundreds of books, and some are on my phone now with Kindle. But the constant is music and knowledge have always been with me. People come and go in our lives. Some people stay for the whole journey. Some people go years. Some people stay for a few months. But I look at the power of knowledge and books. The gift is it keeps on giving. It doesn't judge us. It doesn't say, "Hey, I'm leaving you." It doesn't say, "Hey, I've changed my mind." Wisdom in books and music are great soul uplifters. Whether you're into fiction or nonfiction, I like a lot of stuff, but we're blessed. Here's the good news about circa 2024 with all this information. We have been gifted all this knowledge at any point in human history. Go back 100 years. Our great grandfathers and mothers would have been floored by how much opportunity and knowledge and wisdom that's given to us. We take it for granted because there's too much of it. So when someone says, I can't learn a skill and I don't know what to do, I go, are you kidding me? Are you friggin' kidding me? You can go online, you can get master class for a couple $100 a year. You can learn from the best artists, writers, business people, nonprofit leaders. They record their content, which could be made into a book, as we've talked about. They're giving you the gift of 40 or 50 years of their knowledge. And you can pay to watch this for pennies on the dollar. You can go on YouTube and get this for free. Are you kidding me? Here's the problem. You're lazy. You are so lazy in making excuses about you can't this, you can't that. You need to tune your mind up and say, why can't I? Why can't I learn? Ask the better question. That goes back to the core of my teaching. What is your mindset? Is it positive or is it negative? At this point in history, we're in an election year, Denise. Tune up your mindset to guard all the bullshit and to like remove the negativity is a daily requirement. I worry about people. Yeah, I'm going to be very stereotypical here. You can print
Turn it
this.
off.
Okay.
Turn off the
You
television.
gotta you
The
gotta
news.
block it. You gotta
Yep.
override it. You've got to implement your own daily mental software. We've done other interviews in the past where I talk about positive disruption. That is about directly, intentionally, positively putting good content in your mind daily. If you do not, this planet and the media masters, they'll try to grind you down to not write your book, to not believe that your stories are important, and to believe that you should give up. Absolutely not. On my father's grave, I talk about that in the new book. Okay. One of the great inspirations of my life was my father dying when I was 11 years old. 40 years ago, he died this year. Okay. I look at that and say, you know what? To honor my father, I want to get after life, to take some logical risks, to enjoy life, to fail, to get back up, dust myself off, learn the lesson, teach others that life ain't over. Life is about constantly learning, failing, getting back up, learning, and becoming a better human. So, whatever has to motivate you, that is one of the great drivers of my 51 years on this planet was the loss of my father. I miss him. I also want to honor him by getting after life and grabbing it by the tail, going to a concert, writing a book, hiking a canyon, exchanging ideas, teaching people, being taught, doing interviews like this, sharing my wisdom, sharing my failures, because I only got one shot. And Denise, this life goes really, really fast.
It
So I can
does.
check out. And if I'm on my deathbed and I get that moment, I go, God, when I go to the light in my faith walk, Jesus, I'm coming home. Thank you for the gift of a dynamic, rich, fulfilling life. Lord, I gave it all I could. I gave it full pedal down to the metal. And if I can do that when I check out, that has been a significant life.
Oh, I think you can. I don't think you need to worry about that. But you said something, and I wrote this down, Tony. Music, knowledge, and I added to what you had to say there by adding the word curiosity.
Amen. Amen. I'm
No.
looking at a picture of myself from the late 70s when I was 6 years old. And it's, it's not a black and white photo, it's a color photo that my mom took. And I look at the picture when I'm in my office to remind me to stay curious and to never take myself too seriously. You're going to meet, Denise, this is for your audience, a gift. You're going to meet the same people going up the ladder of success as you will when you fall. And
Oh,
if
yeah.
you have a long career, you're going to fall a few times. Trust me, you will fall. And if someone says they've had a perfect life and they don't have any issues and they haven't had any setbacks, I don't want to either work with them or be around them. And I'll tell you why. They're lying.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have failure. You're going to have life hit you. You're going to have divorce, cancer, issues with your kids, business partners, your preacher, your former preacher. Count on it. You're going to have the Disney rose-colored glasses removed at some point. And I want to be around real people that are authentic, whether I agree with them fully or not. I shouldn't agree with them because we're all unique. But I look at it and go, wow, um, this to me, people that want this perfect life have not taken a lot of risk. In the picture of me at 7 years old, is to remind me that you should have fun every day too. You should have a lot of fun each day. You don't know if at midnight, if you're listening, if you're going to be here tomorrow. And I don't mean that to sound morbid or scare you. I don't get into that. I'm saying is to value each day, no matter what's on the schedule, that it could be your last.
Right.
And that's from my teachers and people I've interviewed from, W.M. Paul Young, his book, The Shack, to other spiritual leaders that have taught me that every single day is a gift. Oh, I've heard that before. You know why you've heard it before? Because it's true, Denise,
Well, I'm not going
especially
to
the world we're in
argue.
right now.
Yeah, exactly. And people, I've had people in my life just not come home. They died
Correct.
on the highway. Yeah, it's just you just don't know. And I was having a chat with myself the other day because I do that all the time. I'm curious about me. What am I thinking? Why am I doing this? What the heck were you thinking, Denise? If you're not, I don't know what you're doing, but I got to thinking the other day for some reason I still haven't pinned it down that my life right now is way too comfortable. I
It
feel like I'm
happens.
getting a bit lazy. And I sat up and I took myself outside and, got barefoot and stood in the mud because we're in the hurricane season right now. It's just, I've got parts of my yard that I call it Lake Griffitts and it gets a little muddy back there. And I went into the middle of Lake Griffitts. It's a big dip in my backyard. And I just stood there barefoot and said, "What am I doing? Why am I so comfortable? What's about to hit me? What can I do to get out of seriously what is my rut?" And I had a long chat with myself. And most people go,
Hmm.
"Oh, what's wrong with that?" Okay, I'm losing my curiosity. I'm not doing the things I really want to do. I'm comfortable. Get up and get moving.
Wow. Um, I want to thank you for sharing it because most people won't share that inner sort of sense of fear or deep vulnerability. And every human has those existential questions, as Jordan Peterson would say.
Oh, I
Most
love
people just won't admit it. When they say, well, that sounds a little hokey. And, I hope that, you people, I'm going to throw this out there, strong opinion. I say this live. Let the voice in your head be your biggest ally, not your biggest enemy.
right.
And that roommate in your head is your internal dialogue, your voice, those thoughts. And I damn well hope they're more supportive than negative, because if they're negative, you also have a society externally that's very conditioned to be safe, negative, and fear-based. And if you don't override that in your head, your voice in your head, that should be your best ally, is negative, you have a tough road, because fear and doubt and playing it safe and not taking initiative and getting too comfortable are very addictive. Okay, that goes back to Napoleon Hill you mentioned earlier. One of my favorite top five works of fiction, or excuse me, nonfiction, is Outwitting the Devil.
I
And
love
I've
it.
recommended
Yep.
that book for years and years and years, and I will continue
Get
because
it on
my whole takeaway,
Audible. It's fantastic.
yeah,
Listen to it too.
his whole premise, my big takeaway was doubt is the biggest enemy you have. And most of it is in your head. Now, the last 10 years alone, particularly the last four, if you speed it up, the world now, the global media and the leadership, the apparent leaders are selling fear and doubt. They're amplifying it times 1,000 every hour, every day. They're trying to scare people to not live. And I call bullshit on that. And hopefully, the last 4 years, I'm going to mention it one time, the word COVID woke the planet up that social distancing was the biggest mistake in human history. I've gone on record in multiple television interviews the last 4 years at the beginning of the pandemic, not playing politics, that was the highest form of doubt and deception was to try to divide us. Humans are meant for social connection, not distance. Let me
I'm so
repeat it.
glad you say it again, and then I have a thought. So say it again.
Humans are built for social connection, not distance. That will go down in the annals of history as the biggest mistake, the worst, the worst idea that any politician or world leader had was to make us distance ourselves. That is wrong. We are built to be together, not separate. And I'll go to my grave on that. I may never run for politics because someone's going to try to soundbite me. I do not care. The amount of disruption negatively it caused on this planet Earth is unspeakable. And hopefully we learn from it. It will never happen again.
I I certainly hope so. But you just mentioned something that sparked. the reason I think I was having this come to Jesus talk with myself
Yes.
about I'm too comfortable. I'm not lazy, not even close to lazy. But it also dawned on me that, before and after COVID, everybody knows I am a highly committed introvert, highly committed.
Mhm.
There are no pictures of me on the internet. There never will be. I do this podcast so I can meet and connect and network with, highly regarded people. But you're not going to catch me outside, having
Mhm.
glad handing. It's just not going to happen. And I thought, the COVID thing really gave me permission to just pull my turtle head back in even
Mhm.
tighter and say, I don't have to go anywhere. So I'm working on
Yeah.
that. I do want to be around people for 59 3/4 minutes. It's about all I'm good
Yeah.
for.
Well,
But,
let
but
me add to this. This is
still,
just my opinion for what it's worth. Good for you. Be Denise. We're taught in 12 step. I'm a former compulsive gambler, 7+ years clean a day at a time. We're taught live and let live with each other, respect each other's differences, celebrate them. We're not all supposed to be the same. Let me ask a question to your audience. Everyone says, I want them to be more like me. Imagine how boring the world would be if everyone was exactly like you.
yeah,
This world would be, there'd be no contrast, no creativity, no laughter. The joy is the contrast, is the uniqueness and the differences. The challenge now is the world leaders have got to say, just because I disagree with you means I hate you. We need to stop that. That's the joy of the human race, is the differences and how do we coexist. I'm not talking about being a hippie. I'm talking about how do we coexist with the gift of all this contrast. That's the gift of being human, is that we're all different. Some things we agree on, we like some things, preferences, but the joy is people that are different than us. And I go back to what you're saying. I love the term live and let live means, hey, I respect your jam, your freedoms. You respect mine. And we don't have to be exactly the same. And we shouldn't be the same. And we've got a world right now that's trying to say everyone needs to fit in these little boxes. Why? That's what freedom, creativity, writing, storytelling, interaction with other humans, it's about the celebration of our differences and ideas, freedom of speech.
it,
Hello.
it is. And I tell this to a lot of people. They'll be asking, picking my brain essentially, and they'll, put forth an issue that they have or what they think is an issue. And I will listen and say, are you comparing and contrasting? Or are you
Mm,
just going down one road? And they go, oh, can I get back to you? Yeah, get
that's
back.
great.
Compare
A
and
lot of times
contrast.
I'll add to that. My team will throw an idea at me. They'll challenge me. I pay one of my key people to question everything I do. I say, debate me on it. I pay them to debate me
Right.
because
That's
I'm too
exactly.
close to it.
Well,
And I
and
say, you know what? Here's what I say. I hadn't thought of it that way.
exactly. And I'll have a thought and then I'll think about it again later. I'll write it down. I write everything down and I'll come back and go, what was I thinking? And then I'll
Hmm.
revisit, go, well, that didn't make any sense. So I'm comparing and contrasting my own thoughts pretty regularly.
Well, and amongst I hadn't thought of it the way the other two that I like to use when something new is presented is fascinating. Or I'll go, that's interesting. Those three, fascinating, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. What it also fosters is more idea flow from the person talking with me. That they've said,
Exactly.
okay, tell me more. I hadn't thought of it that way. That's really fascinating. And they go, okay, they feel safe to continue, not to sell me, but to share with me. There's a difference of intent, share versus trying to hard sell me. I'm open-minded to it. I think what's so interesting is people say, well, social media makes people isolated and self-contained. It can, but you have free choice, free will. It's up to you to decide how you look at it. But I know that when something new is presented to me that questions my worldview, I have to go, huh, interesting. Let me step back and process that. Doesn't mean I lose who I am as a human. Doesn't mean I have healthy boundaries. But sometimes my boundaries can change based on new information, new
Yes.
breakthroughs.
Yep.
And I just look at it and go, wow, we were taught that as children into high school. When we get into college, we're told, nope, you can't maybe think this way. Play it safe. That's the way we've always done it. That's society telling you to give up on your curiosity, Denise. Let's go back to your point, which is very true. Never stop questioning. My three children, not perfect, no children are. If you ask them on the streets, what are a couple things your dad like pounded into your mind as a child that hopefully stuck? There's two things they would say I know. He always said, think for yourself and question everything. Yep, I want critical, positive, growth oriented children on this planet Earth. You're darn right. The other thing they would say is, Dad always would say the magic words. What are those? Please and thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
please
Yeah.
and thank you will take you a long way in this world
Or
because
in the
it
Deep
shows
South,
people
we'll
that you're
also,
grateful. You're
right.
grateful.
We
Please and thank you,
are.
the magic words.
Well, we've got a few sayings in the Deep South. One is bless your heart, and everybody knows what
Hmm.
that one is. The other one, and this is my personal favorite, ain't happening, hun. So
Yep.
that's a fancy way of saying no. No is my favorite word. I wanted to go back a little bit, and I know we're running out of time. I think you're going to have to come back because I've still got so many things in this book that I want to chat with you about. But we're talking about storytelling, and people will say, oh, to kind of paraphrase what you were talking about, oh, I don't have a book in me. I don't have anything to talk about. Listen, I lost my grandmother a long time ago. I had an Irish grandmother and an English grandmother, and my English grandmother was just honestly one of my favorite people in the world. She was born here in the United States, but of English stock. And she didn't have a whole lot to say, but when she had something, it was usually a one-liner, and I was like, give me a pen. Somebody give me a pen. I've got to write
Hmm.
that down. And she, as she got older, she didn't have Alzheimer's, but she did have, some memory issues. And she would repeat the same stories from her childhood over and over again, which drove my mother batty. I
Hmm.
didn't care. What I wish I had done now was recorded them because her voice is now forever lost.
Hmm.
So you can
Um,
make a book out of memories like that. You can make a book out of it, anything. Go do it.
well, you're absolutely right. Here's the thing. I was going to add to that. You don't have to come up with your own stories. You can record other people's stories. You
Right.
can collect stories. Maybe it's someone that your local VFW or in your Rotary Club or your church PTA has these great stories. Interview them and say, hey, let's co-write a book together. That's another option. People co-write a book. Forgive me, I'm going to mute this. I have civil defense going in the background. Go figure. We talked about emergencies and politicians. They test our civil defense at noon on Fridays. So if you hear the
Yeah.
siren,
I
there
don't
there
hear
isn't a
you.
there isn't a real crisis going on. It's just they're testing civil defense. I think that's a God wink. Anyway, so um, but no, you don't have to just come up with all these stories on your own. You can capture, you can record, you can co-write, you can interview people and then have them transcribed into a book. There's lots of options, Denise. And I want to say something real quick. Thank you again for having me on. Yes, I'd love to come back. And here's the thing, a lot of this interview has been about mindset.
Yes.
That's not an accident. Most of the book is about mindset. Here's why. If you don't think you can write, you don't believe you can write, you don't think you have time to write, you're not going to write one word. So a lot of the book is the siren. It's funny, the air raid siren's going off, hopefully in your mind, is to let you know you can write the book. If you believe you can write the book and you do it just simple ways, one page at a time. And it doesn't have to be this complex formula. Here's the weird thing about our beautiful minds. We love to make things more complex. Albert Einstein said, the genius is in making the complex simple. He is spot on. The older I get in years chronologically, I'm becoming more simple about how I teach, how I speak, how I want to do things. Because if I make things too complex, I procrastinate, then I don't get them done on time. So there's the other little aha. The book is really not about tons of how to, Denise. You've read it. It's a quick read. It's about you getting sufficiently inspired, as Ben Gay taught me, to get writing. That's it. And as you start writing, good things happen. You don't have to have it all edited right away. You don't have to have the right designer. You have to just get the writing done first. Then the how to comes into place. There's plenty of ways to find the how to. It's readily available on the internet. It's you believing that you are worthy to write, you can get going on the writing, and you can finish the writing. Does that make sense?
It does. And I have two thoughts that I want to not really end this with, but share with you before we have to go. One is the word can't. I banned that word from my vocabulary a long time ago. I will tell you, I don't swim because I don't know how, but I never say I can't. I just say I don't or I won't, not can't. And the other thing is, you and I were talking in my virtual green room about, I got just about a full chapter done this morning, and I'm really pleased with it. But when I'm done here and I've got this podcast up and, it's out there where people can listen to it, I'm going right back into that chapter and I've got some God winks that came from you. They're going in there.
Cool. One of my coaching clients from years ago, her name is Cass Rose out of Seattle area, has a great quote in her book. It says, excuses are the lies we tell ourselves to not take accountability.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get much more direct, non-politically correct than that. It's a hard-hitting statement. We make those excuses in our minds every day for different things. Not a judgment call, it's just the human nature. And we have so much input. When we remove the excuses, if we say, you know what, damn it, I'm going to get that book done this year. And we take one little action, like we record an interview, we go and we start writing like up to 2 or 3 paragraphs. We tell a couple people in our inner circle, hey, I want to write that book this year. Will you check back with me in 30 days? Those little nudges forward of progress, those little dominoes forward movement could be the spark that we say, I'm done with you, excuse. I'm tired of you in my brain telling me I can't do it. Shame on you. I'm going to take action starting today, starting now. So someone's listening to this interview. They say, you know what? I've been wanting to write a book. Maybe they get done listening, or maybe they stop the interview and they say, you know what? Here's the title of my book. Oh, here's a few chapter ideas. Then the interview has been successful, Denise. We got them to do something different than to sabotage or make an excuse in their brain that they're not good enough, they don't have time, they don't know what to write about. Something sparked in our interview, their mind, the inner channel to go, poof, I'm lighting a match today. I'm lighting this thing on fire. We start today. And you and I can't predict when they're going to get the book done. But if
No,
something sparked out of this interview to get that book done eventually, then this interview was beyond valuable to not just you and I and your audience, but to that specific person that listens to you.
I agree. And something you said too, and I wrote this down. I'm always writing when I'm listening to my guests, I'm scribbling notes. I've got one particular Ben uses he uses yellow pads. I use composition books. And I have one book that is just for you, my guests. So it says June 7th, Tony Rubleski, and it's got 3 pages now, notes that I took. But one of the questions I wanted, now I don't know if it's a question or an observation, but when you talk about, you're giving yourself excuses. I don't know about you, Tony. It physically affects me. Once I realize that I'm just giving myself a bunch of baloney excuses, I start to realize that my stomach hurts or I'm getting a headache because I have physically impacted how I think about myself. And it's not good. And if it's not good, get up, go get a drink of water, walk outside, do whatever you have to do, and go back and reassess that thought and change it, change your mindset.
Agreed. Um, the hardest part, every human, I believe, listening will get this, is the little white lies we tell ourselves
Hmm.
do take a physical, spiritual, and mental toll on us if we don't correct them or relieve them. You can't lie to yourself. You can't.
No,
And
your
that's
body
why
hates it. Just
your
trust me,
your
your body
body,
doesn't
your
like it.
your attitude shows it after a while. Your physical form will start to show a breakdown because it's tough to make these little micro commitments and then tell ourselves why we can't do it. And over a period of years, it's psychologically very damaging. I'm not trying to play a therapist, but I've studied many and been with some. They'll tell you those little white lies. What can we do to correct them so they don't take us out physically, mentally, and spiritually? Okay. And I want to give you an idea that just hit me listening to you. You have another book after you get this next one done, or the
Do?
one you're currently, excuse me, is Behind the Microphone,
Oh,
Confessions from 500 plus interviews, or how many interviews you've done. And you take some of the key quotables from these hundreds of interviews you've done and you make it into a book. You just put, here are key quotes or nuggets I gleaned from being one of the top podcasters in the world.
from my
That,
mentors. I'm telling you,
yeah,
all my mentors.
yeah. And you've got the journal already done. And you mentioned how you write. I have actual physical journals that are full that I write in my handwritten journals every day. Some make it into books, some don't. Some are my gratitude lists that are in my used up journals that are filed away. But something's always written and recorded. But no, I think that's fascinating what you said is you're always learning. anytime I listen to a podcast, I'm hoping to get one or two ahas. It doesn't always happen, but I'm shooting to say, wow, there was something I hadn't thought about it that way. Does it sound familiar?
It
Or that's
does.
fascinating. Or they have a unique worldview, or they recommended a book. Sometimes I don't get anything from the actual interview, but I get a book recommendation that I order and it changes my life again. So there's different ways to learn, but I want to say one key thing: curiosity. Um, Studying the writing process. The book is a compilation of mentors, and I recommend their books, from Stephen Pressfield, who's a great writing coach, to Stephen King, who's a great fiction writer, to John Grisham or J.K. Rowling. I don't have all this new knowledge. I'm sharing other teachers that taught me and how it helped me. And I have a few fresh wrinkles of things that I've learned, but there's no original way I've learned, or I've learned it from others too. It's a combination.
Ben and I were talking about that. Ben Gay the third and I were talking about that in our podcast on Wednesday. There are no new ideas. It's just how you
Correct.
approach them. They show up. And if you look deeply enough, you'll find out that Confucius said it a long
Yeah.
time ago. But just because there are no really new ideas doesn't mean that you can't learn and grow from the ideas and the thoughts and the processes that come your way. Be curious, compare and contrast, write your book, get a podcast, do whatever you need to do to get your voice heard. And writing a
Yeah.
book is certainly one of those ways. Okay, we are definitely going to run out of time. And I think we'll get cut off. So I hate to, you're going to have to come back. You can't tell me no. I asked you on the radio. But
Offer accepted.
oh, good. Listen, Tony, I love having you on the show, and spending time with you is always a pleasure. So before I reluctantly let you go, do you have any last thoughts to share? And how can people, our listeners, connect with you on the web?
Two quick things. To find me, it's easy. Go to mindcapturegroup.com. Again, mindcapturegroup.com. You can find the books there. Let me end with this. The big talk right now is about AI. I've been saying this to a lot of high level groups the last few months. I want to share it with your audience and you. Everyone's worried about AI. Some of it you definitely should be worried about. But here's the good news, I believe, on the other side: AI cannot replicate the human soul and our creativity and our stories. It can't replicate it. It can't be cloned. That is good news for the human race, for you and I. Don't let AI fear you. Be cautious about it. But when it comes to the human soul, the machine can never beat us. There it is. Wisdom, creativity, the soul cannot be cloned. The human race will be okay. We're going through major changes right now. I'm not trying to be too esoteric or political here, but the good news is humans have creativity, and we have the gift of knowledge and wisdom that cannot be replicated.
I agree with you, and thank you for sharing that. Listen, I like AI, but I'm also aware that it is machine learning. You can ask it. I use it quite a bit. Give me some ideas for this, and blah blah blah. I use it for list
It's a
building.
tool.
It's
It's
a
a tool.
tool. Remember
That's
when
it.
we first got our first computers? I know we all remember this. We're like, I don't
Yep.
really know what to do with it. It's scary. Same thing. You have to
Yep.
teach it. You must teach
So
it.
there's my final thought, because I'm getting more executives asking me pro and con. There's my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, listen, to our audience, thank you for being with us today. And I hope that you took a lot of information and just ideas and thoughts from Tony, and grab his book, grab all of his books. I've got them all. So as we conclude today's episode, your feedback means a lot to me. And if you found the show helpful, please support us with a quick review on iTunes. And the reason I ask is because your input is vital in my mission to inspire and empower more individuals. So don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a review, mention Tony, and share your Partner in Success Radio with your friends and your colleagues. And be sure to go find Tony Rubleski on the web and connect with him. And again, grab his books. They are well worth having on your entrepreneurial shelves. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Tony, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Appreciate you, my friend. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.